You're all terminated. Effective immediately. The words cut through the mahogany conference room like a blade through silk. Sharp, final. Irreversible. I stood at the head of the table. My cream blazer wrinkled from the 3-hour flight. My first-class ticket still folded in my right hand like evidence at a crime scene. That ticket, Seat 1A, Atlantic Airways flight for 47, paid in full but denied on site. That's what started everything. Around the table, 9 board members sat frozen in their leather chairs on the 57th floor of the Apex Holdings building in Manhattan. In the doorway stood the 3 people I'd summoned without warning. Captain James Thornhill, his uniform still crisp. Jennifer Walsh, senior flight attendant, her blonde ponytail pulled so tight it looked painful. And Tyler Bradford, the ground crew manager. For hours ago, I'd been the black woman they'd escorted off flight for 147. The woman they'd told didn't fit in first class. The one whose credit card they'd examined like it might be stolen. The woman they'd removed in front of a cabin full of witnesses while David Whitmore, 62, silver-haired and smug, settled into my seat with a glass of champagne. Now I stood in their boardroom. Now I held their careers in my hands. Jennifer's face had gone the color of old paper. Captain Thornhill's jaw worked silently. Tyler Bradford just stared at the floor. In the corner, David Whitmore himself sat in a guest chair, called in as a valued customer to provide his perspective. His expensive suit suddenly looked too tight. His Rolex caught the light as his hand trembled. The realization was dawning on his face like a slow, painful sunrise. The woman he'd dismissed, the woman whose seat he'd taken, wasn't just any passenger. She owned part of this company. Bernard Ashford, the CEO of Apex Holdings, cleared his throat. Ms. Cross, perhaps we should discuss this privately before making any hasty decisions. My eyes shifted to him. I didn't raise my voice. Authority has its own frequency, Mr. Ashford. In exactly 3 hours, the world will know what happened on Flight 47. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every single person who's ever been told they don't fit somewhere they paid to be. But let me take you back to where this started. 4 hours earlier, Gate B17, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. That walk, I'd made it 100 times. Atlanta to New York, Tuesday morning. Today's meeting was with investors interested in Cross Technology's new cloud security platform. I wore dark jeans, a white blouse, and a navy blazer. No designer labels. No jewelry except a simple silver watch my mother gave me when I graduated from MIT. I carried a leather laptop bag and pulled a small rolling carry-on. I looked like what I was, a successful professional traveling for work. I did not look, in my own estimation, like someone who needed to prove she could afford a first-class ticket. But I'd learned over 38 years of being a black woman in America that looking like something and being treated like something were two different things entirely. At Gate B17, the priority lane was nearly empty. I pulled up my digital boarding pass, Atlantic Airways flight for 147, Seat 1A. The gate agent, Rosa Martinez, smiled. "Good morning. Welcome aboard, Ms. Cross. Enjoy your flight." No hesitation, no surprise, just standard service. I made a mental note of her name, Rosa. I'd be very glad later that I remembered it. I walked down the jetway. Ahead of me, an elderly white couple moved slowly. I slowed my own pace, giving them space. At the aircraft door, the man's wife turned, saw me, and her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Oh, are you first class too?" The question wasn't rude, but it wasn't neutral either. It was surprise, a reflexive shock. "Yes, ma'am," I said evenly. Well, her smile was tight, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Good for you, as if I'd won something instead of purchased something. I had heard variations of that phrase my entire life. Good for you for getting into MIT. Good for you for starting your own company. Despite the unspoken ending was always the same. Despite being black, I followed them into the cabin. The air smelled like expensive cologne and fresh coffee. Seat 1A, the best seat on the plane. I located the row and stopped. Someone was already sitting there. David Whitmore, early 60s, silver hair, a navy suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He held a crystal champagne flute. He looked, in every possible way, like someone who fit exactly where he was. I approached, keeping my voice friendly. "Excuse me, sir. I think there might be a seating mix-up. This is my assigned seat." The man looked up from his newspaper. His eyes traveled from my face to my laptop bag to my comfortable flats, and then back. A 3-second scan in which I felt myself being appraised, categorized, and found wanting. "I sit here every Tuesday and Thursday," he said, returning to his newspaper as if the matter was settled. "You must be mistaken." His tone was casual, just certain. The certainty of a man who'd spent his whole life being told yes. I felt the familiar warmth start in my chest, the warmth that came from a lifetime of moments exactly like this. But I kept my voice level. "I have seat 1A confirmed on my boarding pass. Would you mind checking yours?" He took a slow sip of his champagne, set the glass down with deliberate care. Finally, with visible reluctance, he lifted his eyes. "Young lady," he said, and that phrase carried more condescension than most full sentences. "I've been flying this route for 6 years. I'm a Diamond Premier Elite member. They hold this seat for me. I understand you may have an arrangement," I said, each word measured. "But I purchased this specific seat 3 weeks in advance. I have confirmation right here." I showed him my screen. He barely glanced at it. "System error. Happens all the time with online bookings. Talk to the gate agent. I'm sure they can sort you out with another seat." Sort you out? As if I were a glitch in his routine. Behind me, another passenger cleared his throat impatiently. "Excuse me," he said. "Some of us are trying to get to our seats." I stepped aside, letting him pass, but didn't move away. "Sir," I said, my patience beginning to fray, "I'd really appreciate it if you could just verify your boarding pass. There's no mistake on my end." He turned a page of his newspaper, the paper crinkling loudly. "I have an understanding with Atlantic Airways. Now, if you'll excuse me, you're blocking the aisle." I was about to respond when Jennifer Walsh, the senior flight attendant, appeared. Her eyes, I noticed immediately, were already slightly narrowed, already making assumptions about who was causing the disruption. "Is there a problem here?" she asked. "Yes," I said, keeping my tone professional. "This gentleman is sitting in my assigned seat." Jennifer looked at David Whitmore, then at me, then back at him. The calculation happened instantly. Older white man in expensive suit, a regular. Younger black woman in casual attire, an unknown. Decision made. "Mr. Whitmore is one of our most valued Diamond Premier Elite members," Jennifer said, as if this explained everything. "I'm sure we can find you another excellent seat." "I don't want another seat," I said, my voice now with an edge of steel. "I want the seat I paid for, 1A. Jennifer's smile tightened. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." There it was. That word, difficult. The word they always used when someone had the audacity to expect what they'd paid for. As if asking for basic fairness was an act of aggression. "I'm not making anything difficult," I replied. "I'm standing here with a confirmed boarding pass for seat 1A, asking why someone else is sitting in it." I handed her my phone. I watched the micro-expressions flicker across her face, saw the moment she registered that the boarding pass was legitimate. But then she glanced at David Whitmore, relaxed, a known quantity, a reliable tipper. And she looked at me, an unknown, a disruption. "There seems to be a system error," she said. Echoing David, "Mr. Whitmore has a standing arrangement. I can offer you seat 3C and credit your account 15,000 bonus miles for the inconvenience." "That's not an inconvenience," I said quietly. "That's you taking what I paid for and giving it to someone else. That's theft. I'm not interested in compensation for giving up what already belongs to me." David Whitmore sat down his newspaper with a sigh of theatrical patience. "Look," he said, "clearly there's been some kind of error with your booking. But I've had this arrangement for years. I think we all know how this should be resolved. Why make this into something it doesn't need to be?" "What this needs to be," I said, looking directly at him, "is that I sit in the seat I paid for. That's all. That's the entirety of what this needs to be." A woman in row 2, white, early 40s, with auburn hair and intelligent eyes, spoke up. "Excuse me, but she's showing you a legitimate boarding pass. Shouldn't you be asking to see his boarding pass too?" She was right. Jennifer hadn't asked David for any documentation. She had simply believed him because. "Why?" Because he was Diamond Premier Elite? Because his suit was expensive? Because his skin was white? Jennifer flushed. Ma'am, if you continue to be difficult about this, I'll have to ask the captain to address the situation. I would appreciate speaking with the captain, I said, because I'd like someone to explain to me clearly why Mr. Whitmore's claim is being taken at face value while mine, despite documentation, is being dismissed. David stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I sit here every week. I'm not giving up my seat to some random passenger who clearly doesn't understand how premium cabin service works. Random passenger. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Random, I repeated softly. Is that what I am? Not a confirmed ticket holder, just random? Jennifer physically inserted herself between us. Ma'am, she looked at me. I'm asking you one final time. Will you accept alternative seating? No. Then I'll need to call the captain. Passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions. That's what I had become in her narrative. Not a passenger with a legitimate complaint, but a problem, a refusal. More passengers were boarding now. Some looked annoyed. Some looked uncomfortable. Some, I noticed, had their phones out, recording. The cockpit door opened with a pressurized hiss. Captain James Thornhill emerged, his uniform immaculate, his expression suggesting annoyance. He scanned the scene, saw me standing, saw David seated, saw Jennifer's body language screaming vindication, saw the phones pointed at the scene, and made his assessment. What's the problem here? His voice was deep, used to being obeyed. Jennifer jumped in immediately, establishing her narrative. Captain, this passenger is refusing to follow crew instructions. She's claiming seat 1A is hers, but Mr. Whitmore, as you know, has an arrangement for that seat. Captain Thornhill held up one hand. Stop, ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice. My voice is at normal volume. Captain, I haven't raised it once. I'm the captain of this aircraft. His tone got harder. When my crew tells me there's a disruptive passenger, I trust their judgment. Now, are you going to cooperate or do we have a problem? The bias was so casual, so automatic, it almost took my breath away. He hadn't asked what happened. He hadn't asked to see my boarding pass. He hadn't asked David to verify his claim. He'd simply walked out, looked at the scene, and made his ruling based on who looked like they fit. Captain, I said, forcing my voice to stay measured, I'd like to show you my boarding pass. That won't be necessary. Jennifer has already reviewed the situation. Jennifer has not checked Mr. Whitmore's boarding pass. She's taken his claim at face value while questioning mine, despite documentation. Mr. Whitmore is a Diamond Premier Elite member and a valued regular on this route. If he says this is his seat, I believe him. The woman from row 2, Sandra Price, stood up again. Excuse me, Captain, but I've been watching this entire interaction. This woman has been completely polite. She has a legitimate boarding pass for 1A. All she's asking for is the seat she paid for. This isn't right. Captain Thornhill looked at Sandra. Harder to dismiss. Ma'am, I appreciate your input, but this is a crew matter. I'm going to have to ask you to sit down. This is a fairness matter, Sandra replied. And as a passenger on this flight, I have a right to voice concern when I see another passenger being treated unjustly. The threat landed. Sandra sat down, but she kept her phone out, still recording. The older black man in row 4, Kenneth Wright, cleared his throat. Excuse me, Captain. My name is Kenneth Wright. I'm a retired attorney, and I've witnessed everything that's happened here. What's taking place is discrimination, clear and documented discrimination. Captain Thornhill looked at Kenneth. Another witness. Another complication. Sir, please sit down or you'll be asked to deplane as well. Kenneth met my eyes, held my gaze. 30 years of civil rights law in that look. He sat down slowly, but before he did, he said clearly, loudly enough for the entire cabin to hear, my name is Kenneth Wright. I am a witness. I have seen everything. Captain Thornhill turned back to me. His patience was completely gone. Ma'am, final opportunity. Accept the alternative seating that's been offered or we will be forced to call security to remove you from this aircraft. I thought about my mother, Diana, who'd taught me that respect wasn't negotiable. Don't let them make you small. I thought about every black girl who'd be on a plane someday. I thought about the phone's recording. I needed this to be absolutely, unquestionably clear that I was the victim, not the aggressor. "Captain," I said, my voice perfectly level, "all I'm asking is that you verify both boarding passes before deciding who stays and who goes. That's not an unreasonable request. That's basic fairness. This isn't about fairness. This is about flight operations and following crew instructions." Jennifer pulled out her communication app. Her voice carried, "Captain Thornhill, requesting security at Gate B17. Passenger removal. Female black, approximately 35 to 40. Potentially aggressive. Potentially aggressive." I hadn't raised my voice once, but Jennifer had called security, specified my race, and labeled me. Every black person in that cabin felt those words land like stones. I closed my eyes for just a second. When I opened them, my voice was quiet but absolute. "Call whoever you need to call. But everyone here is watching. Everyone recording is documenting. When this is over, when the truth is clear, every person who participated in this will have to answer for it." Forced removal and strategic retrietoire airport security officers arrived. Officer Johnson, a black man, and Officer Torres, a Hispanic woman. Officer Johnson saw the scene immediately, a black woman surrounded by white crew, and a white captain. He looked at me, not the captain. "Ma'am, can you tell me what's happening here?" The first person to ask my side. I showed him my boarding pass. "I'm being removed from a seat I paid for. No one has checked his boarding pass. No one has asked him to prove his arrangement. The only person being asked to prove they fit here is me. And you." I looked at Officer Johnson directly. "You know why." He did know why, but he had a job to do. "Ma'am, if the captain requests removal, we're legally obligated to comply with that request. Do you understand?" "I understand," I said. "But I need everyone here to understand what's actually happening. I'm being removed for being black in first class, under protest. I left the aircraft." As I passed the young flight attendant, Carlos Reyes, he whispered, "I'm so sorry. This is wrong. What's your name, Carlos? Remember this moment. Remember what you saw here. I walked off flight for 147, away from the seat I'd paid for, away from the simple expectation of being treated like a human being. Ahead of me was a phone call to my attorney, Hannah Frost, and a plan that would make everyone on that plane regret this day for the rest of their careers. I sat in the gate area. Notifications were flooding in. The live stream had gained 47,000 viewers. The TikTok video was over 80,000 views. Twitter was buzzing with hashtag #FlightFor7. I called Hannah. They removed me because a white passenger wanted my seat and they decided he deserved it more. And Hannah, it's all on video. It's already going viral. Hannah was quiet for a moment. "Naomi, this is very, very bad for Atlantic Airways. Do you want to sue?" "I want to do more than sue. I want to change things so this never happens to anyone else. Pull Atlantic Airways' corporate structure. Find out who owns them. Find every shareholder, every board member, every executive. I want to know who's responsible for this culture. You're thinking about going after the whole company. I'm thinking about accountability. They didn't just kick me off a flight. They've been doing this. We're going to expose it." Hannah called back sooner than expected. "Naomi, you're not going to believe this. Atlantic Airways is a subsidiary of Apex Travel Holdings, publicly traded. And guess who owns 4.7% of Apex through the Cross Technologies venture fund?" My breath caught. "We do, you do. Which means you have shareholder rights." My mind began racing. Shareholder rights, access to internal documents, leverage. "Hannah, what are my options?" "Naomi, your options are extensive and about to become their nightmare." By 9:30 a.m., hashtag #FlightFor7 was trending number 3 nationally. News outlets were picking it up. Forbes was running the angle. Naomi Cross, CEO of $2.3 billion Cross Technologies, forcibly removed from Atlantic Airways flight. Their stock was already dropping. I was letting them panic. I wanted them to feel the heat before I made my move. I had my team assemble the case at Cross Technologies HQ. Hannah Frost, General Counsel. Eleanor Rodriguez, VP Communications. James Sullivan, CFO. Dr. Marcus Chen, Chief Data Officer. And Simone Baptiste, HR Director. The conference table was covered with documents and financial data. Hannah started. Atlantic Airways is fully owned by Apex Travel Holdings. Apex is publicly traded. $14.7 billion market cap. Your 4.7% ownership is significant. You can demand board meetings, access internal documents, push for investigations. More interesting, Hannah continued. There are 47 pending discrimination complaints against Atlantic from the past 3 years, all settled quietly with NDA letters. They've been paying people to stay quiet. Dr. Chen shared his screen. I scraped social media. Mentions. Found 147 public complaints with similar patterns. David Whitmore has been named in 9 previous incidents. 9. They knew about him. They compensated victims, but they never stopped him from doing it again. James Sullivan pulled up a chart. Apex Holdings. Stock is currently down 3.8%. Market cap loss of approximately $560 million. I let out a low whistle. In 4 hours. Simone Baptiste added, I pulled EEOC complaints from employees. Atlantic has 23 open investigations. From their own staff. There's a cultural problem here, not just isolated incidents. Here's the strategy, I announced. We have shareholder rights. We demand an emergency board meeting under Clause 1(b) to investigate discrimination. We argue the ongoing social media crisis constitutes an emergency requiring immediate action. I want that board meeting within 6 hours. Bernard Ashford, the Apex CEO, tried desperately to settle privately. He mailed me, offering a public apology, a policy overhaul, and significant compensation. I forwarded it to Hannah. He's trying to contain this privately. Don't respond yet. Let him sweat. The numbers kept climbing. By 1 p.m., the combined videos had 8 million views. The hashtag was trending #1 worldwide. At 1:37 p.m., Hannah sent the formal request to Apex Holdings Board of Directors. The response came faster than expected. At 2:14 p.m., Hannah put the call on speaker. This is Gerald Matthews, General Counsel for Apex Holdings. Your emergency meeting request is highly irregular. It's also completely legal under your corporate bylaws, Hannah retorted. Have you seen your stock price in the last hour? You can agree to the meeting or we can file this formally with the SEC and watch your stock drop another 5% while you argue procedure. Your choice, silence. What time? For P.M. Your headquarters conference room. Board attendance mandatory. You sure you want to do this in person? Hannah asked me. No, I said. I'm going there. I'm sitting in that room. I'm looking them in the eye. If they want to tell me I don't fit somewhere, they can do it to my face. I arrived at Apex Holdings at 6:09 p.m., 2 hours late for the 4 o'clock meeting. Perfect. The security guard knew who I was. The video had reached even here. The boardroom was exactly what I expected. Mahogany table, leather chairs, and a view of Manhattan. 9 board members looked deeply uncomfortable, and along the wall, sitting like students called to the principal's office, Captain Thornhill, Jennifer Walsh, and Tyler Bradford. When I walked in, their faces registered instant horror. The woman they'd removed was here. David Whitmore, in the corner, was starting to realize the depth of his mistake. Bernard Ashford, the CEO, tried to regain control. Ms. Cross, I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am. I held up one hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Mr. Ashford, I don't need your apology right now. I need your attention. May I present? I walked to the head of the table. Bernard had to sit down. I claimed the space. Hannah distributed 3 ring binders. Tab 1, Timeline of Flight for 147. Tab 3, Financial Impact, including stock price and social media metrics. Tab 4, Pattern Analysis, showing 47 pending discrimination complaints. Tab 5, Employee EEOC Complaints. Good evening. I began at 7:54 a.m. this morning. I was forcibly removed from that aircraft, not because I violated policy, but because a white passenger wanted my seat and your crew decided he deserved it more. The context is that this wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. Victoria Chang, the CFO, looked up sharply. That's because legal and HR have been burying them. You told me that personally, Bernard. This isn't a PR problem, I continued. It's a cultural problem you've been hiding. And now it's cost you $1.4 billion in market cap in 9 hours. James Wilson, the investor rep, leaned forward. Let's be clear. You're a shareholder using a personal grievance to force corporate action. Tab 2, I countered. Statements from 5 other passengers who witnessed discrimination. Tab 5, 23 EEOC complaints from your own employees. This isn't personal. It's pervasive. You've been destroying value. Bernard tried to regain control. Ms. Cross will conduct a thorough internal investigation. No, I said, my voice cutting through. You've had 3 years to conduct internal investigations. They've been worthless. I'm not here to ask you to investigate yourselves. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen. Cross Technologies Venture Fund owns 4.7% of Apex Holdings. I am exercising Clause 1 for B. Emergency investigation with immediate suspension of implicated personnel pending review. Patricia Delgado, the chief legal officer, went pale. Gerald Matthews, the general counsel, sputtered. First requirement, I continued, gesturing to the 3 crew members. Immediate termination of flight for 147 crew. Fired with cause. No severance beyond legal minimum. Captain Thornhill shot to his feet. This is outrageous. I have 28 years of service. I turned to face him. You had 28 years of service. Past tense. You ended your career when you decided my skin color determined my seat assignment. Sit down. Captain. He sat down hard, face red. Jennifer Walsh started crying. I was following protocol. Show me that protocol, I demanded. Show me where it's written that elite status overrides confirmed seat assignments. That was bias dressed up as procedure. Second requirement, removal of General Counsel Gerald Matthews. You buried complaints to protect the company from liability, instead of addressing the underlying discriminatory behavior. That's enabling civil rights violations. Third, creation of independent oversight committee, run by outside civil rights organizations. Full audit of all policies and training programs. Fourth, $100 million diversity and inclusion fund. Real money. Scholarships for aviation training in underrepresented communities. James Wilson nearly choked. $100 million? Shareholders will never. $100 million is 7% of your market cap loss today. I interrupted. It's a bargain. It shows leadership and positions you as leading industry reform. Your shareholders will recover faster with this than without it. Victoria Chang, the CFO, nodded slowly. She's right. From pure financial analysis, this stabilizes the stock. Fifth, mandatory anti-bias training for all employees, in person from qualified experts. Sixth, public apology. You, Bernard, on camera, taking full responsibility. No passive voice. No mistakes were made. Active ownership. Seventh, compensation for affected passengers. Full refunds plus $25,000 each to all 47 pending complaints. No NDA letters. Eighth, protection for whistleblowers. Carlos Reyes, Rosa Martinez. Any employee who spoke truth to power gets formal protections. Michael Harrison, the board chair, held up his hands. Ms. Cross, these are extensive requirements. We should negotiate. They're not requirements, I corrected. They're the minimum acceptable response. You have 2 options. Implement these changes starting immediately and begin rebuilding trust. Or refuse and watch me take this public. I have interviews lined up with every major news network. Your stock price, your reputation, your operating license, all of it hangs in the balance. Victoria Chang spoke first. I move we vote on Ms. Cross's 8-point proposal. All points as written. Sarah Mitchell immediately seconded. I watched the votes. 4 hands went up immediately. We needed 5 for a majority. I spoke into the silence. I'm not just a shareholder. I'm a customer. I'm a woman of color with millions watching my next move. I'm a CEO with resources to wage a sustained campaign. I can make this company an example of how to handle discrimination correctly, or an example of what happens when you don't. A younger board member, a hedge fund representative, raised his hand. The 5th vote. Majority achieved. Michael Harrison's shoulders sagged. The motion passes. You're all terminated immediately. he said to the crew and Gerald Matthews. Effective this moment, security will escort you from the building. Captain Thornhill stared at me, humiliation and rage on his face. You've destroyed our lives today. I met his eyes. No, Captain. You destroyed your own careers when you chose discrimination over decency. I just made sure you faced consequences for that choice. Stepping out of the building, reporters immediately swarmed. Ms. Cross, what happened in the board meeting? Will you sue? Atlantic Airways has agreed to implement comprehensive reforms, I announced. Terminations have been made. Policies will change. An independent oversight committee will be established. I'm gratified that they chose accountability over defensiveness. A black SUV pulled up. As I got in, the driver turned. Miss Cross, my daughter, Kesha, was removed from a flight 2 years ago. Same situation. She didn't have your resources to fight back. Thank you for doing it for her. Tell Kesha she's the reason I did this. Bernard Ashford made his public apology the next morning. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was discrimination, and it happened under my leadership. As CEO, I take full responsibility. He detailed the 8-point plan. 6 months later, the results were clear. Atlantic Airways stock was fully recovered. Carlos Reyes was promoted to lead flight attendant. Rosa Martinez was senior gate agent. David Whitmore was banned for life. His marriage ended. His business ruined. Jennifer Walsh and James Thornhill were unemployed, their names forever linked to the incident. My equity and travel foundation was flourishing, monitoring discrimination across the industry. 73% reduction in complaints at Atlantic. On a flight to London, a young black woman, a scholarship recipient, sat in seat 1A. No side eye, no suspicion, just normal service. She texted her mother, "Mom, they just treated me like I fit, like it was normal." Is this what it's supposed to feel like? That was the real victory. Not the revenge, not even the reforms, but the freedom to exist without constantly defending your right to exist. If this story moved you, if Naomi's fight for respect resonated with you, if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with humanity, please hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to stand up for yourself when others tried to make you small? Your story matters, and this community is here to support you. Thank you for being part of the change we need to see in this world.